Happy Victory Day number 2, since now we have a Ukraine one on the 8th and Russia on the 9th for victory against the Nazis in World War II. Hi, I'm Erica, born and raised in Duluth, Minnesota, and all throughout California. Graduated high school in Santa Cruz, California, and then went to Duluth East. Currently, I'm going to be going to school in North Dakota. I'm waging how honest I should be about where I'll be, but it's awkward in that I'm a vulnerable person, but I still am wanting to be outspoken. So I'm doing State of the Republic because the unions right now are at fault in large parts. And Calvin Coolidge would have agreed with me, or he did agree with me. He talked about issues with labor unions, and so did James J. Hill, my favorite railway magnate of, I think he was this century, or he was just at the turn of it. But anyway, the predatory poor, the predatory rich, and the predatory politician all got together for bagels, croissants, and shitty coffee and thought to themselves, aren't we special? Anyway, so I named it State of the Republic instead of State of the Union because we shouldn't be thought of as a union. That's a communistic idea. That's un-American. We are a constitutional republic for a reason. And of course, above all, we can, as every citizen born on this soil, you have the Declaration of Independence as your utmost birthright, protection, and duty. So more than being a republic of a constitution, we're a republic with a Declaration of Independence. So I'm going to call it State of the Republic. Welcome, audience. May 9th, 2023, 1:05 p.m. None of my smiles or laughter is enjoyment in any of my people's suffering. It's laughing at the people who thought they could get away with it and who still think they can. No. It's been long enough. So I'm going to talk about general concerns with liberty and self-determination. So any citizen being able to say, oh, I want to work, and if I need to earn capital to go do this, and I'm able to go do this, that is absolutely not the case. So that's a concern with our State of the Republic. Is that no child, no person, no American citizen looking to fully own their intelligence or what they would build or invent or create is able to do so without foreign interference, domestic interference, or any actual protected liberty to do that. So general concern of liberty right now for my State of the Republic, and especially as somebody who was going into chemistry and physics, it's like, oh, for example, I'll repeat the story I have before, where I got hired to do plastics research at UWS, which was so cool, taking a class. The professor was Rios Mendoza, and she had worked in research for over 20 years. And she was teaching a class called Chemistry of Everyday Products. And as somebody who was going into chemistry, I'm like, yes, people need to be aware of the chemistry of everyday products in such a massive way. We built our wealth off of chemistry. We're a chemical country, way before we're a free country today, where we're at today. And I just enjoy thinking that way. So she hired me to do it, and looking at what I would actually be spending my time on, because I was looking to settle somewhere, or at least be like, okay, where can I tolerate the socialist agenda enough to still push my work through? And was UWS Superior was not that place. And one of the reasons why I chose to not continue in that shithole. There are beautiful parts of the city and people. All in all, it's a fucking shithole. And I can say that with extra spite because that's World War II city. You built the ships, and it's only been 78 years. And wow, look at the degradation. Gross. And so the research entailed measuring plastic particles. And I asked her, took just a few days of her class, because that's how long it took to figure out, oh, this is complete trash and you have a socialist agenda. You're not a real scientist. You're a socialist and you're a genocidal maniac, Miss Rios Mendoza of UW Superior, Wisconsin. Because I asked her before even showing up to do it one of the days in class, what's been invented? Because I was like, okay, measuring plastics, this doesn't align with anything functional, especially because there are bacteria that eat and digest plastic. And we already know that. We've known it for over a decade. And I was like, what's been invented in the 20 years, keeping an open mind that you've been doing this plastics research? Because she's so passionate about getting the plastic out of the water. And she was honest, and she said, nothing. Don't bring a plastic bottle of water in here. We all work together, and we don't bring in plastic water bottles. I have so much enjoyment drinking out of plastic water bottles now. And then she had also admitted in the class, which is why I called her a genocidal maniac and a socialist propagandist, because she proved herself to be one. She said, and there were just 7 other people in this class. It was a summer class. Really loved my classmates. So it's a bummer I couldn't sit with them because it was a really cool group. Talking about the hormones in the water and the decrease in men's testosterone. And she said plastic scientists predict that the male species only has 60 years left. She did not care. She cared more about if you could have a plastic bottle of water in her classroom. The boys in the class, when she said that, just all looked down. Like every 18-year-old boy knows he's going to live to see, American boy is going to live to see, massive death, and he just has to accept it because of teachers like Rios Mendoza who teach that way. And that was my last day of class because I was like, oh, you're a piece of fucking shit. And I'm not giving you any of my intelligence or insight. I pay for this class. I've already done independent study. And it's always funny when people think they're doing me favors. Because trust me, sweetheart, it's just a favor that I'm still alive. So that was my last day in that class. And I said, well. And she also had a certain reaction because I was talking about Mexico. So she was part Mexican and wherever else south of the border. And I hate it when people do it because this has happened all the time in California. And I'm not for it because I am anti-cartel. I'm pro reasons why a lot of them formed, like the Zetas and other cartels, especially with agriculture and that slavery in the 50s. And the American slavery, because I wouldn't have any part in the Mexican slavery part as far as an opinion for the state of my republic. But I'd said, like, I don't even know if she asked or if I was just being an asshole and shared it, because it's all like, if you're light skinned, you're not Latin sort of thing at UWS. Very racist teachers, experience mostly racism onto myself at UWS. And I said, like, San Miguel de Allende is somewhere I traveled in Mexico. And maybe it was like a get to know you question, like, and I've only traveled like a few places, your favorite place you've gone. And then she was just like silent, looked away. And that's where, like, a lot of the socialism comes from south of the border. So to remind my audience, if you're just tuning in for the first time, my great-great-grandmother, the capital of Yucatan, named after her or for her, it was Ann Merida, and so Merida, Yucatan. And that's the oral history. So I could be getting details wrong, and I hope to be corrected if I am, but I won't know till I go there and figure it out for myself. But their family had been murdered by socialists, and we have two competing stories in my family. And one is that she had fled. The papers say she married a Swedish man, Charles Crownholm II, and then there's competing stories with, like, the documents on Ancestry. But like in World War I, when the socialists came through Spain and did their fucking thing, genocided a bunch of people, won't let you think, have an opinion, started World War I. Those were the same socialists in that era when my grandmother fled Mexico. And so when I meet some, especially up here, and they're playing like the Socialist Democratic Party at large, we want to punish, and quite frankly, they talk about killing white people all the time and white men all the time, regardless if they're tiny boys or not. Full-grown men, boys, they talk about killing white men often. And it's literally come up this entire decade working with the YWCA, the YMCA, True North AmeriCorps, AmeriCorps in general, UW Superior, Lake Superior College, UMD. Where else would they talk about genocide? The Waldorf School in Santa Cruz, maybe we did a little bit. We were high at the beach most of my senior year. I was like, oh, freedom. Little did I know. So yeah, and like, of course, just, yeah, nothing of function, production, or actual repair in that the few days it chose to be like, do I want to take this chemistry of everyday living class, mainly talking about plastics? No. And yeah, just the whole thing, her whole selling point for that class was do all these things, take all these steps, and then we could punish the Republicans enough to make them choke on the plastic while we physically suffocate them for justice. Sort of, I'm paraphrasing that part, of course, but there's some anyway, moving on. So yeah, genocidal concerns. Other people talk about it. I haven't gotten too much into other people's point of view because I spent a lot of time observing just from living it and working in those spaces. But concerns about the climate activists who aren't looking to invent anything, can't invent anything, would enslave people to their means, would commit genocide to their means, and those points come up literally in like their save the whales and humanity has to die to do that. Again, probably because they feel like they can't invent anything or don't know that we're literally holding those possibilities right now, and that they're being fear-mongered upon, and then their weaker morals are falling victim to, oh, well, genocide, oh, if they're killing the planet, then we would just kill that group of people. And that's the logic that they're using in those Chemistry of Everyday Living class by Rios Mendoza at UWS, and then most other climate or activist classes speak in that way. So there's just still genocidal concerns there, because the people, like the normal people, the people who are just like, oh yeah, like I want a clean ocean, I'll buy this product, or yeah, I want made from recycleds, I'll buy this water bottle. For those people, they need to get their head out of their ass, and I had it up there myself for a while, but they're just making money marketing you an idea that you're not demanding any proof for. So the solution for that is proof needs to be demanded, like the Republican Party has done. Sorry, not even the Republican Party. Like that. I'm not going to talk like that. But like some congressmen, conservative congressmen, have done these past few months with having climate activists on the Senate. So Byron Donalds has, I did a video on that, and Dan Crenshaw has confronted them both, bringing them down to basic function to admit none of the renewables are doing what you're claiming, and you're defrauding millions of people. And they've gotten them to admit that. And then that was Dan with the Texas Senate, and then Byron Donalds with the you want to make batteries out of child African slave labor and call it more morally correct than just domestic fossil fuels, which would make us energy secure, and we have more moral labor standards. So he brought that crescendo down as well. Still nobody from those parties at large, the climate activists or their political party at large, the DNC, the Democratic Party, have come forward to admit that they were defrauding millions of people for decades. So until then, for that topic, you just need to demand proof. And then the other solution, then, okay, moving forward, you want to trust another politician selling you that same thing, then you say, okay, I demand proof. And then what you could do as a citizen is you could go legislate with your representative for any environmental standard. For example, Duluth, Minnesota just failed on theirs. Their mayor had promised by 2023, Emily Larson, that they would be carbon neutral or half carbon neutral, something like that. They're trying to use solar panel where it's cloudy most of the year. Oh, I didn't use common sense while I was mayor. Now people are going to be mad at me. That's Emily Larson of Duluth. She ruined the city. She's a terrible, terrible leader. Still better that she was there, because terrible leaders can like jostle shit out. If things are continuous, but like under the surface they're bad, it's good to get a bad leader, because then they throw people out of their routine, and then the citizens can see like, oh, Parks and Rec. I'm not blaming Parks and Rec of Duluth, but they don't really go to work, and they're a waste of taxpayer money. And I can think of most Duluthians would be happy to volunteer to do any bit of what Parks and Rec does, then do something completely different with that office, like build like an architectural park and rec that would be required to be constantly building. But so you would, for example, in Duluth, where I was born and raised for the most part, you would legislate with your city council, whoever, and say, okay, well, they need to provide proof, and then there needs to be something to say that there's a punishment or a consequence for defrauding the public, saying we're going to invest all these taxpayer dollars for these solar panels because we're saying they will work. And then when they don't, like they just failed, they did not meet that margin, you're not going to. because it's cloudy where you live. Oh, I had a tick on me. I saw some turtles down at the pond. It was really cool. I love seeing turtles. And I flicked the tick, and I should probably find it and light it on fire. One second. Oh, where did you go, bud? Okay. Well. Oh, there he is. The bugs finally came out. Where I'm at. I love seeing the bugs. Yeah, and so that's like what has to be done, and then at large, like that also has to be done. So like those people wanting that goodwill, trying to push that goodwill forward, being concerned about plastics in the water. The hormones from the plastics in the water have absolutely poisoned your children and the environments around them. You have some species of fish that no longer produce males. They produce aggressive females who the adaptation has happened for them to reproduce differently. But like Rios Mendoza said, and at least she was honest, men's testosterone, this was like, I was confirming this with her. So I've read reports that since the 1950s, plastics were introduced in 1907, the polymer and then packaging slowly grew. And then a massive use of polyesters and plastics after 1960. 1950. And so since that time, today, American boys, men, have 50% less testosterone. That's a genocidal number. That's genocide. Okay, so you do need to do something about the fucking plastic then, right? Very good. And it's obvious too, you can see it in the bone mass of our population. When I see kids today, yes, there's genetic anomalies, but all in all, to see people like without fucking bone mass, that's a consequence of the hormones. So it does need to happen. People just need to demand proof for promises of things that are supposed to fix actual issues. So moving on, I think that's the biggest genocidal concern is the testosterone in men. And then, in American men is who I'm going to focus on. You guys need to fucking get to it. Actually, it's really sad that you would let this happen to all your boys that you claim to love and want to care for. So anyway, yeah, that part makes me so sad. It made me so mad that was my last day of class. And then just seeing the men in my class, like they were like soccer players and like happy, like strong men. And then just to see them when she said that, just absolute, like, no, like I don't want people to see how sad I am at it. And like, just to see them all have that reaction. And it was just a class of 7, but that was it infuriates me, and I'm going to move on. So because I'm wanting to do State of the Republics because I want to have the mindset of like presidency, because I want to be able to speak to things that I think would improve function anywhere in the country on any topic. And that's kind of how I want to finish my degree with American history. So threats to life and well-being for Americans and against. So the perpetrators would be psychology, which was formed with European psychology and mostly German psychologists after World War II. And it is a control. It's meant to curb aggression. It is not at all a successful enterprise for curing people of mental disorders or for helping people with real trauma like child rape, other rapes, sex abuse. And it's really actually an easy exercise. If you want to prove it to yourself, you can go to betterhelp.com, and it's a therapy website that starts out with a questionnaire. I did it recently. And one of the first questions is, do you have trauma? Because it's trying to fit you with the therapist. Okay, most people, maybe not everybody, but most people would put yes, right? You would think, oh, it's going to separate trauma. Were you tortured in childhood? Were you raped in childhood? Is your trauma that you just have verbal abuse from your family? Your parents tell you they don't love you. You get bullied at school. It doesn't separate it at all. So it's absolute garbage. You would never treat somebody with a definition of trauma being, I hear nasty words and they embed themselves in me. Yes, I need the help because that does have a cognitive, physical effect after a while. But you would never treat that person the same as, I was raped and tortured throughout my childhood. And they are. So it's complete fucking trash. And it's weird where it does, if you go further through the BetterHelp website, and it's like asks about like alcohol or drug use, or maybe like, do you feel this way at that? That is all some individual post-World War II, their idea to keep society healthy but also constrained. And so they have to tell themselves, oh, alcohol, this issue, I have to categorize smoking. So they immediately go into categorizing, and even though the origin of the trauma would have nothing to do with anything that they're then categorizing. So that's betterhelp.com. Prove it to yourself. So American psychology is a threat to people's well-being. It is not something that is argued or improved on, and it hasn't been since post-World War II, where the psychology was very much allowing sex abuse to curb aggression. That's real. German pedo experiment, Lotus Eaters podcast, if you want a good insight there on American psychology. And then moving on. Yeah. Just laughing at the fucking psychology. I've tried to find so many. I finally found a good one. Of course, she's still not what I will need because she's highly Christian. So she's trying to do Christianity to heal. And I'm like, no, it's just a function issue. And I just want, and then society all surrounding. So just help with my internal function and then still being a person in society. Yes, like Jesus, but that's private. And that's something I don't want another person's relationship with Jesus to be the therapy I receive. So it's a little like that, but she's a survivor of the trauma that I experienced. So that's what makes it just way better, because she actually has that expertise. And talking with her, it's like, yep, You shouldn't need a psychology degree. You should have a competing website like BetterHelp, where it's like, I want to talk to somebody who survived life in Baltimore, Maryland, and who's a female around my age, and then just get like advice. Like that would actually be a much more successful psychology enterprise, therapeutic enterprise, as far as conversation therapy goes. And it should be an option. The American Liberty wouldn't prohibit that. And it would be wrong. It'd be un-American to keep that from coming forward as something that people could use. Or like, I want to talk to somebody in their 80s. Like, I want to get advice from, and then that would be such a cool thing for cash older people could do, like on an app, because it's just like, I'm just going to be giving advice to somebody from the 80 years I've lived through trauma, torment, loss, and love. And that would be cool. All right. Moving along. Large food production, threat to life and well-being. Dan Crenshaw, I did not watch the video you did about the U.S. food pyramid scheme, but I watched a little bit of it, and I was like, yeah. So the food production, working in public schools, it was, and then doing like after school programs. It was infuriating because it's garbage, and they've gotten better. Miss Michelle Obama, I think you helped out a lot with that when you were First Lady. I haven't gotten to the Obama presidency really yet, but I just, that's the one thing about you that I was like, oh, what is she doing? She's eat your veggies. And so I did see that while I was in there in the public schools change, because I saw like fruit cups and veggie cups, and that was cool to see. But then like the contracts that funds the schools, it's like it's a cinnamon roll 2 times a week for breakfast at Duluth, Minnesota public schools. They had cinnamon rolls for tiny children, and some of them just like already so malnourished. And you have fucking cinnamon rolls. Now, they loved Cinnamon Roll Day, and that's where all the kids would get together. Even if you didn't have free breakfast, people would come for the cinnamon rolls. Okay. But that's unacceptable to serve small children, many of them malnourished, cinnamon rolls, taxpayer funded, twice a week. And the contracts they have with these, the people who feed this public school children, is tyrannical, and it's not for the well-being of the child. Really, you should just do bars, because it'd be so cheap to still do like a good like granola or protein bar, and they only give the kids so much time to eat anyway. So like most of the time, these kids would be throwing away most of what they took. And they love the bars. Like if I were to, like if they got the little granola bars or like the Bobos or those kind of things that would randomly come in, that was always a favorite hot take, you know? Oats, honey, salt, peanut butter, no peanut butter. Excuse me. And that was that was something with the after school programs too. Just like super sugary gummies. And that part was much harder because they didn't go home yet. They already didn't eat all of their lunch or breakfast because it was a goddamn cinnamon roll, something that they weren't going to eat and just threw away. And then lunch, they also just don't get a lot of time. And then you're excited. And then, you know, if you have excitement in your belly and you're a little kid, you don't know you're starving until school's over and you can relax. And so these girls would come in like starving and still have to wait to 5 or 6 to get picked up till the end of the program. And we would have like gummies. or like the graham crackers. That's the Keebler brand graham crackers was a common one. None of that has fiber in it, or just very little. And I could tell the girls were miserable all the time, like faint looking and just like just hanging on. Just these girl power girls. I loved that job. Yeah, and so I was always like, because we were like really pushing social justice, like 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016. And then I was like, oh, you guys have an agenda. And so I was like, oh, well, it would be justice if we just got some fucking oatmeal so the girls aren't starving. And I was nice because I got to have a bit of a leadership position when I did that role. But then, yeah, they're like, no, can't do that. Okay. Take another gummy. I want to look. Yeah. And so that has to stop. I don't know if Dan talked about it when he had that whoever on for that part of his podcast / talking to his constituents. Luckies. I'm a potential constituent of Dan Crenshaw, and that's how I see myself. And so I'm like, hey, congressman who stands alone. And who I just, for other things like the physics and his ability to see the writing on the wall, which he talks about a lot as far as physics goes. So no offense, Byron Donalds, because you just started and I appreciate what you're doing. But he's such a good congressman. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. It's I don't have a crush on him at all. Just except for I'm like, oh, you're doing the job, the Declaration of Independence, and then the threats to the Republic, and then you're pointing it out as, and you do it all by yourself. So very inspiring. Oh, no, he has a team, and they're really awesome, obviously. I just don't, see them or know who they are. Okay, so yeah, mainly for the large food productions, really people need to be able to produce food regionally. And that's something that most people agree on. Also worked at the Whole Foods Co-op for a little bit in Duluth. And so being a part of that community for a little bit definitely reassured that want and that need. But because of the politics and then people not accepting certain parts of reality, those things don't grow how people want them to, as far as local food productions. So yeah, the goal there is just get local, and that's absolutely like a defensive thing too. Like food is going to be on the table as far as warfare tactics this next 100 years, and there's a lot of food to play with. So please start growing things locally and regionally. And then the parents need to care that their kids aren't getting nourished at school. You cannot learn if you're malnourished. So just all those garbage fucking parents from Duluth Public Schools, where I tutored for a while and did after school programming. How about you give a shit about what your kid is eating and you don't think about money? You just have like a cheaper grain available and you learn to deal with the behaviors from the dependency you're encouraging by shoving a bunch of sugar and additives down your kid's throat for convenience. So how would you stop that? Moving on. Pharmacy, I got into it a lot with my death by iodine coverage that I did on my family's part of my family's actions in the production and sale and propaganda of iodine. I don't know too much because I'm just starting my research there. So I got into that. And again, that's saying I am, sorry, this is a pharmaceutical company, not me. I am wanting to develop something that I think would work. I need a live population to gauge what will happen from what I produce. And so I will, with known knowledge of chemicals, biology, and pharmacy, sell in the realm of what I'm trying to research, and then you end up causing harm because these scientific, genocidal, really just psychopaths playing God, which especially since Operation Paperclip, most of the medical and pharmaceutical field has been full of those ideologies that, oh, if I could just get this to work, oh, that because this was the outcome, I can go back to the origin, because to actually, let's say, take, what's the most simple thing? Depression. Okay. Simple, common thing. Okay. So I want to have a drug for depression. I want to have a medication that works for just what they call it, a chemical imbalance in the brain for depression. Okay. You need a population of people whose brain activity you've measured since birth. And then of that population, the people who naturally get this chemical imbalance you're claiming, you would then need to take them in under a controlled circumstance where they're all working a similar stress load. And then when they're all eating a similar diet, and then you would try your pharmacy and the placebo. Nobody does that. That's why it's been live population, like with the MD from Yale this morning on the NIH's website talking about heart conditions in young women. That's why it's outcome to diagnoses, which is wrong. And any common person can see that's wrong. Yeah, which is why the show House was so fun growing up. It's because he's just like, oh, that'd be funny to watch right now, House, that series. It's like, oh, it could be this. It's presenting as this, but haha, it's the paint that when you were 4 and you gradually were where you sat in your room, slowly leaching in this very rare chemical that has caused a mimic degree to, what would he always say? Lupus. No, it's not lupus. Because so many diseases will mimic others. And so the cause fucking matters. So yeah, oh God, solutions for there. And I'll just say it again, all pharmaceutical, chemical, and environmental, whatever, those all need to become elected offices that people debate. There's so many people have already adapted to poison, but it's absolutely genetic, generational, and the poisons aren't getting better. Nobody's wanting to admit it, and it's very, very true. So those need to become elected offices. And then yeah, just the consequences. Yes, this is what you get for paying for what you think is convenience. Even you're paying for the thought of convenience, even though it might harm your child, yourself, and then your children generationally. your grandchildren. So you chose the thought of convenience for that. And most people who've fallen under the barrage of pharmacy know that because they're suffering those effects. I'm very sorry. I've suffered similar, but knowing that you need to care about preventing it from happening to somebody else and be very honest, and try to prevent it from just happening to children or the next generation. That's all you can do there. And then of course there should be cases for certain people. And of course there's going to be things that I could see being argued as an absolute need because nobody was stepping up to offer anything else. And the consequences at that time would have been so much larger. But that's why things need to come out in debate. And that's why they need to be elected offices. For pharmacy, the FDA, the EPA. Yeah. Or it really could just be, I guess, the FDA technically approves whatever pharmaceutical thing. So you could just keep pharmacy private. I think that's best. And then to have the FDA just be all elected offices that, like when the Senate and Congress meet, the FDA would meet over any and every chemical that touches our shore and that's created in our realm. And so educations. This is how I'm going to do my State of the Republic. We're going to do some alternate nostril breathing. I am a certified yoga teacher, so anybody can do it. You don't have to be certified. Okay. It's thumb to close your nostril. It's just to balance the hemispheres of the brains with oxygen through your pineal gland. It's so nice returning to a place that's more safe, or being in a place that's more safe so I can actually do yoga and meditation. I look forward to being able to secure my safety by working minimum wage to buy a house so I can do what I'm trying to do independently. I would take help from the FBI or anybody else that I already reported to. But I think I can, and I would really like to, and I wish I knew to do it sooner, that I just need my own housing because people are going to keep threatening me. And just to, there a few years ago, I was doing that kind of yoga every day, hours a day, and just the peace within myself from providing my body with so much controlled oxygen is just like the only medicine that works for me as far as getting me in my body. And yeah, so I'll be doing that in my videos more because this stresses me out. And I don't like seeing people being treated this way in a country where you're supposed to have control of your life, your livelihood, and the future of your children and your grandchildren. Or at least for while you're alive, whatever you can do that's not trespassing on other people's liberties. Well, just where people are supposed to stand up against tyranny, and we have so much ultimate tyranny right now, so it does affect my body physically. Stresses me the fuck out. In a good way. It's good stress. And I love it because I suffered so long, like observing my family and what they were up to and being tortured by them and other people. And then, so I like it because it's me like regaining my power and like, I will be understood and I will communicate the truth. And that's what I want to do. The truth as I know it. So we're going to get into educations. To tell children that they are born disadvantaged to other children who both are entitled to the same rights and duties is a crime. It's severe psychological abuse and it has to stop in education. You cannot keep telling children of certain skin color that things are a certain way when they're not true. And then it takes away from actually pointing out what everybody could do, and that's that the Democratic Party had Klan bakes in upstate New York up until 1964, and that's something the Texas Senate was talking about in 2020 that everybody chose to ignore. So you should talk about race. You should talk about some Republicans in the Democratic Party at large and their genocidal Ku Klux Klan partners at Planned Parenthood, Miss Margaret Sanger, and all the plans they had in the 60s. You should absolutely talk about it. But what you cannot fail to do is say, this is what makes you very powerful, very unique, and truly one of a kind in history and in the world today, American children, is that you are the only people who can lobby your representatives, who can push legislation through as any citizen can, who can write, who can say, this is a bill I want to see, this is something I want to do, and you can keep at it with no end throughout the entire career of that politician that's representing you where you live. Not only can you do that, you can run against them, anyone, with your better idea or your better legislation. That's the counter to the fear of this is the reality of the world we live in, par for the course for any empire or country or tribe or nation. And this is what you can do about it. So don't leave them powerless. Still tell them the truths of we didn't quite get rid of the Democratic Party, KKK, because just 1964 happened and everybody got welfare from the Democratic Party. And then never got back to it. So it's okay to educate about the 60s accurately and Jim Crow and talk about things that do still exist, but it's not okay to fearmonger, deny opportunities from kids who, especially because they're so passionate about it, should be pushed forward to legislating for themselves or doing things to actually find, okay, well, where is it if it's left, and then let's bring it to the table, or at least bring some things to the table, trying to find an answer for where the Democratic Party, KKK, still controls interests that exclude certain ethnic groups. I experienced that racism as a baby. That was part of the reason my family tortured me, was because of my Mexican ancestry. That's and that's a fact. So, yeah, educators need to stop psychologically torturing children, and they need to just do their job. These are the facts. This is what makes you all unique, is you can legislate, you can run for office, you can make a difference, but you're not going to do it joining the thugs of the Democratic Party or the Socialist Brigade, and doing just their bidding, which isn't going to earn you any more freedom anyway. In fact, there's a lot of Democratic Party KKK elements in the socialist group and obviously the Democrat Party. So, and that ends with the socialists, just nailing the hammer on that coffin. You don't just get things. It takes a lot to create, invent, build, produce, transport, and manufacture. There is no world where it's just we're all going to get money and things are going to get better. No, somebody needs to make that, and even more so, which is part of the purpose of America. Anybody can invent themselves to absolute stardom. Well, you're supposed to be able to, but the socialists ruined that for now. We'll get it back. But usually, especially for really great inventors that have been dedicating observation throughout their childhood for a lifetime or for any long period of time, those people usually have social things they're concerned about and know that what they invent, evil will live off of, because it just is a natural part of the world. It's like the internet, for example. And then to think for the Socialist Party, which they do, to think that it's just, oh, this is fair, this is fair, this is fair. We're going to punish people who don't comply with our fairness. Just absolute tyranny. Because when you want to talk about measuring work, or what the inventor who thought of it their whole life or observed it their whole life should be paid, it's it might take me a year to build it, but if I worked on the observation for 30 years, that's $50 trillion. And you may not pay in one lump sum, because I have some accoutrements with my invention. And so you will all, if you want to partake in my invention that cures all these things you've asked for, getting the plastic out of the water, force fields for soldiers, just giving a hypothetical example. If you want that, well, then your labor, average person looking to benefit from the invention I'm bringing to society, well, you, my fair laborer, if you thought you could work 6 or 8 hours a day, sorry to partake in what I'm looking to produce for people to advance them, you'll now have to work 18 hours a day. And if you don't want to do that, well, we don't allow slave labor. And so I got to be paid. You see how and parents, it doesn't take that much if you have a kid in that socialist idea, we're fair, we share. Yeah. It doesn't take too much to just give them that lesson of, okay, so we're doing we're carbon neutral, right? Zero energy. So just have a day or a weekend where you're just for all the food we're going to eat, you do one concept at a time. So it's fun. So have them write everything they want to eat, and then send them on a mission that they have to go do everything from as much raw material as possible. So maybe they get some grain, have to grind it and mill it into flour. Maybe they have to churn their own butter. And then you can see the diminishing costs as you do those practices. I tried, so I was like, what's it called? Groomed into living that way because my aunt was the one raising me verbally, and she's like a zero waste Santa Cruz Waldorf school Nazi. And so this socialist Nazi would tell me like, because of this, you shouldn't, or for example, you can't use Teflon, you can't use styrofoam, you can't use plastic. Everything you buy has to be fair trade. Becoming an adult, so 18 in Santa Cruz, California, and then being told that, oh, you have to eat all organic or you'll poison yourself and your depression will come back. I would have had to work like 24 hours a day to afford everything fair trade, to never buy something with plastic or styrofoam, to nourish myself eating organic. She would spend $2,500 a week on groceries. Okay, this was a woman who a few years later couldn't buy a house, so they got to have a little bit of justice. While I was still like, do I want these people in my life? I don't know. I think you're intending harm on me still. But you don't want me to be free, but let me hang around so I can see for myself beyond a reasonable doubt. So yeah, there's no way. There's no way. It's completely things cost things to be produced, and they get cheaper over time with abundance. Nothing that's use less and it'll get cheaper and better for the environment. That's not a reality of the world. What is the demand, oh my God, we want to get the plastic out of the ocean. Wow, look, there's a whole trove of this raw resource. And wow, if that's what your passion is, you could control the raw resource actually, because there's so much plastic in the water. So that's why it's step capitalism all the way. You got to be building, because degrading doesn't make things better for the environment, and ultimately it's going to make people desperate, and it always ends in the exploitation of children, for a reminder of humanity, and then for the truth, and also for labor. So that's what the socialists always end up defaulting on, and they're doing it right now. So alternate nostril breathing again. And then another reason why I'm doing this, and I don't want to leave it out, I'm embarrassed because being dehumanized through it all, but I wanted to enlist with the Minnesota National Guard, my two favorite Minnesota National Guardsmen, Brandon and Ryan Burt, and all the people who were there when I went to enlist. And so I was having a mental breakdown in Santa Cruz in 2018. They put me on an insanely high dose, and Ryan saw me in that change because I wasn't accepted in because of I call it my barbed wire incident. And I told the Indian doctor, Indian American at MEPS, I said, because he was, they have to check out your whole body. And that's like, my family had barbed wire. And then he said, "You're going to do something else, okay?" I loved that experience. And it was the first time I'd been treated like a human from any kind of authority or law enforcement. So it meant a lot to me. And then also I was willing to give my life for my little team that I was hoping to be a part of. I don't know how shit works when you get in. So I'll think of you guys all as my team, Mr. Staff Sergeant Brandon, Burt, and Ryan. Burt and the other people involved in 2017. And so 2018, I was just, okay, let me give you the numbers. So I was put on 25 milligrams of buspirone. So this is all after reporting my dad and their domestic terrorist gang in 2016. So I was my mother's family doctor. So the Scasburg from my childhood, Lakeside, Duluth, Minnesota, put me on 25 milligrams of buspirone. And then it wasn't, doesn't help with the severe anxiety from knowing you're escaping a violent domestic terrorist gang that tortured you since infancy. And that's your family members too. Hi, 33 Vato. Oh, San Diego. I love you guys. I'm doing my State of the Union. Thank you for joining me. So I'll just read you like my title and the description. I don't know if you're reading it. So general concerns, then genocidal concerns from political parties, threats to life and well-being for Americans, against the perpetrators being psychology, large food producers, pharmacy, educations, and the socialists. And then I was just sharing a little bit more why I'm doing this. So I'm having my mental breakdown in 2018 in Santa Cruz because they put me on, my mother's family doctor had put me on 25 milligrams of buspirone, 15 milligrams of Abilify, and then another one of the doctors at the same clinic put me on 7 milligrams of Xanax. And then I just was looking for like an answer to what I should do moving forward, because they don't want me to bring them to court and they don't generally think they committed crimes against me. That's how psychopathic they are. And so I was still talking to my family 2018 in Santa Cruz. And so then I just went like with instinct and started chugging pure vodka, and it clarified a lot. But I had a mental breakdown in that part, which was good because I needed to have that shit all broken down. And so I was like to Brandon, Burt, to Staff Sergeant Brandon, Burt, and Ryan, I was like, let me be the president. Just let me do it. And so I'm doing this off of kind of that, like, that truth in my mental breakdown where I'm like, I feel like I know who's looking to harm my citizens. Like, I think they've been around me. Do you see them too? And so that's another reason why I'm just doing this. It makes me nervous to think of that memory. I just reminded Ryan, Burt, that my family in northern Minnesota are domestic terrorists, and I witnessed part of their involvement in 9/11. And him and Mr. Staff Sergeant Eaton took the information and gave it to the higher ups who do not care. So that's something Minnesota will have to answer for, because we're just like twirling our thumbs. We're just waiting for people to demand an answer, really. And so I look forward to just keeping moving forward. I'm really grateful for that. By the way, Ryan, Burt, if you watch this video, thank you for still treating me like a human and listening to me. You got to find the right people to work with, right, Mr. 33 Vato? And thank you for your last comment. I saw it before I exited out, and I haven't emailed you yet, but I likely will in just a few weeks. And I want to remind myself that 'cause I'm so bad with boundaries, obviously. It took me a while to figure it out that I don't want to get like too close to people on the internet because I know that like instinctually I'm starving for human connection, but that's also like been the greatest threat to my life. And so I want to make sure that I remind myself of boundaries, but I will email you because it'd be fun to exchange things over email. Didn't watch any more of what you sent me about Kay Griggs. I was thinking about it. And especially her being Scottish, and then Joe Biden's wife who had been murdered in a car accident, also being Scottish, and that sort of like very boldness a lot of Scottish American women have. And it makes sense why they wouldn't have wanted Joe Biden's first wife to stay alive, because I don't think she would have allowed so much in her family or in her life or in her husband's political career. So I was thinking about that this morning with what you shared with me. I didn't know you're in San Diego. That's so nice. Well, I guess I don't really know because I'm not tracking your VPN and I don't spy on my viewers. No matter what the term and conditions say. So thank you for joining me, carrying on with my State of the Republic. The threats, this is a big one to actually be concerned with. And if I had kids, I would be horrified, especially because the socialists are right now planning and continuing with their genocide. They're not going to stop until they're stopped. And they're all over, and it's mainly a disease with the youth and the kids. So let me finish my thought here. So the biggest threat is no borders, north and south. We need borders, north and south. And then also on the internet. I don't want to log on at 3 a.m. and see President Putin or President, or do I? Well, hold on, that has to be debated. I like that transparency, but if I'm thinking of protecting kids, because the internet doesn't require IDs, and maybe that should be the border online to access. You need to be able to put up an ID. Because if you're an adult and Putin is giving a press conference at 3 a.m. and he has a live chat on, sure, you can log on and be like, oh, it's Russians, hey. Or whatever you want to say in the chat, or if it's whoever on Twitter, the Iranian fella that was on Twitter, if you want to go in their DMs, you need to, for American citizens, for American children, as a protective measure, we need to demand IDs to even log on or access it. That has to happen. And you could do like a biometric. Everybody could, and that would be a sweet business to start up, to just do biometric, whatever. Because I know some places with actually getting a physical ID is really hard. Well, biometrics is an old technology, and everybody should be able to have their thumbprint if they want to, or their physical ID to log on. And that, of course, should be debated, but we need boundaries online and actual boundaries north and south. It's disgusting how many kids have committed crimes lately, and that's only going to increase. And that's the state of our republic, and it's going to increase in a more organized way that's backed by foreign interests. And so that's the fault of the adults as far as for kids who are kids. But then for like a moral reason, like nobody should just be like, all those college students, let's just go shoot them. Nobody should be thinking that way, because it's, why'd you allow it to happen in the first place? You allowed these foreign interests in. In fact, you're profiting off of them. So let's get some goddamn IDs for the internet. Finally, holy fucking shit, ew. So crimes against children was next on my list. There's a lot of crimes happening against children as far as the bacterial suffocation. They all suffered from the masks. Who knows what so many of them are growing in their lungs or in their bodies. Minnesota, I think, just had a huge syphilis increase. I was theorizing this just with my understanding from my very weird upbringing that because we had a major virus, we're probably going to have some aggressive bacteria. That's like the relationship and the competition of viruses and bacteria in the wild. And somebody, when I was doing some temp work for UPS this Christmas, had said like the kids at the school were having like a mouth, like a fungal thing. And that was something a bunch of horses in fucking Nevada or Idaho were getting, or Montana or Wyoming, whatever horse state, were getting these fungal infections in their lungs last summer, and a lot of horses had to be put down. So that's my fear: crimes against children. And while children are, I think, are more resilient to viruses, they're less resilient to bacteria and funguses. And so while they can like heal better, older people have been exposed to more bacteria. So that's a fear and a concern of mine for the state of our republic. It will be bacterial fungal issues. I guess you should just, I'm not as concerned about a virus. I don't know why. I'm just not. Okay, so you said Miss Griggs revealed her husband. I'm so excited to watch that. I needed like a relaxing evening to do it because I want to have my tea and be able to sit outside. Reveals her husband having meetings with the Guadalajara cartel on Lake Chapala and his involvement in Nicaragua Contra wars. Oh, super chat. I'll look to set that up. Thank you. I wasn't even thinking of that because I'm not that like secure where I am yet. But I'll look to set up like the super chat, and then it would be awesome to find another student who would want to debate stuff with me on like the level or the place of understanding I'm at. And then hopefully they would be somewhere different. So it would be interesting. So I'll look to do that. Thank you for saying and for reminding me that super chat is a thing. I wasn't thinking about monetizing this because I just need any job I can get when I get to where I'm going to school in a week here. So, yeah. Okay, so that's crazy though. I'm gonna look up the Lake Chapala. So I imagine, okay, so that was like 90 something. So this was like 70s. 3-3 Vato. Is it ignorant of me to assume that for a lot of diplomacy south of the border since the 60s, that it's just been a bunch of Ivy League men and women from the East Coast who went down there and just gave it their best from what they knew? From what they knew and from what they were told. I would be surprised how much American muscle, and for the foreign mercs, because mercenaries. That one does make sense because have you seen like in Japan, they're what's like Chicano? They have like a whole like Chicano neighborhoods and like Chicano like cultures, like really cool in Japan. So it's funny because like trends have to spread by some people somehow, and so it's actually like something I kind of admire in a way, separate from the horrendous child crimes, but to spread your influence to so many places and try to operate, with what you have and where you are and where you can go. Like Black gangs and Mexican gangs have traveled everywhere. They are worldwide, and it's fascinating to see that. So I'm not as surprised about the foreign mercenaries. I would have been a few years ago, but learning a little bit more. The American part, I know nothing about the Spanish-American War, except for that some Spanish woman invented Kevlar, and that the Swedish and the Spanish women were really good sharpshooters and riflemen. And I wish there were more movies on it. But I hold on. Commandante Anthrax. It's my special baking powder, and if you wanted to steal my baking powder, well, that is on you. Oh, I see myself live. Okay, Commandante 25. Okay, 3-3 Vato, I know you're on a break at work. You might not want to say and just listen to me rant. How would you solve that issue of so much treason with the cartels, but there being so many domestic Americans, like you're saying, involved? And then there being totally arguable reasons why that might have been needed in some circumstances. How would you solve that, like presidential wise? Okay. And it says seals. Thank you. Okay, so that guy is an ex-Navy SEAL, that teeny tiny little man. Well, okay. I wanted to also subscribe to Sean Ryan because he was in South America a lot, I'm pretty sure, or talks about that a little bit, south of the border. All right. Oh, he has something on called Hunting Pedos. Good for him. Good. And the guest he had on. Very cool. Okay. I'm going to get some more yerba mate. I'll be right back. Where are we in the state of our republic? For my list today, needed direction for the citizenry and elected offices. We need to build domestic transportation and manufacturing like a motherfucker. It's awesome. The semiconductors are coming. Great. And this will help with the political unrest too, especially with the socialist playbook. If the citizenry can travel to the places they're paranoid in, that's not going to be something extensive that they would have to sacrifice even more and save for. We need bullet trains, north to south, east to west. Citizens need to be able to see the rest of their country that they're voting an opinion on, especially when the consequences are deadlier than ever and just atrocious, especially with the child crimes. So that has to happen. Bullet train, and then just we need more railway. And it needs to be something where if you wanted to go to San Diego from northern Minnesota, you could just say, oh, on the weekend, I'm just going to take an overnight train down to San Diego. And then similar people in these huge cities, that's like, oh, I wonder what this random city in Kansas is like, or Wisconsin. Let me go see. It's the best way to learn history domestically is to travel. So, and then also just the potential with growing your own manufacturing businesses and building wealth, especially in the Midwest and places who had like a super nice taste of it in the 50s and 60s. Walking downtown, there was a sign that said Westington House Appliances, and that's one of my favorite American companies. I love the story of that man, Mr. Westington, and how he built his company up and how he handled like demands from laborers and the community he was in. And then the products that they made. I'll probably watch that documentary again later because I love that story. And so that was such a fun surprise to see where I am, that signage. And that's something that I just can't imagine what gems are all over the country as far as people preserving our history that way. And so railway transportation, railway. We need more goddamn railway. And what a easy job to if you want to like just join a project to go do that, make some money for your family. Would love to see that. And then really just for like, if I had that when I was a kid, growing up, I would have traveled and I wouldn't have needed anybody or anybody's opinion to tell me what a certain area was like, because I could just go say, oh, maybe I want to go build a life there. I'll check it out on the weekend. And I think most Americans would be for that. And that's a real uniting factor because people want to be able to understand other people in the country. I don't think people want to be prejudiced or want to be a part of the genocidal maniac socialist agenda. I know most people don't want that. When I was in that mindset of like the socialists when I was younger, it was like oh gosh, that means those people have to die so that we can have clean water so our planet won't expire. Oh, that's too bad that all those people have to die as a consequence. And that's like the mindset they're in because they're so self-righteous, and then the propaganda is all encompassing. And so I think travel would really help break that too. His war ballad. Okay, I'll look up his war ballad. Oh my God, is it going to be like a real Mexican? Listening to that video if I was on the right one. My favorite band is Los Angeles Azules as far as like Mexican music goes that I know of. And that like nostalgia, I really like it. And it makes me miss like Santa Barbara and like Southern California where you are. Aw, it hurts in my heart and my belly. To feel so estranged. I do look forward to saving up and actually going to like events that I am excited about and not ones that I know I'm just going to go to argue or disagree. Because I know you guys do a lot of like patriotic whatever in San Diego. And so it'd be cool to see more of like the Mexican influence in that because I haven't really. And then my uncle who lived in Temecula where I spent some time just wasn't patriotic. He hated America, even though he was a veteran. Personal problems. Anyway, so needed direction, railway. Oh, that'd be so fun. And what a cool thing too for women to labor on. And then, yeah, because it really is like when you turn 18, if you're looking not to do minimum wage and you're like a hot or just, you know, a beautiful young girl, you look at porn and hopefully they don't anymore. But when I was growing up, you would look at porn and you'd be like, oh, I could just make a bunch of cash real quick. Whereas men, when they turn 18, they look at laboring jobs and they're like, oh, I could just go make a bunch of cash real quick. But that needs to be open to women. Like there needs to be laboring jobs that really women are encouraged to go to. And I think that'll help a lot with the fact that a lot of young women just have been going into porn. We need IDs for the internet. And also like women need to be valued for more than their bodies, especially when they're at their most vulnerable, they're most commercial at 18. So that would be cool just for that too. God, I really want a fucking railway. You know what? I'm going to let railway answer that whole thing for needed direction for citizenry and elected offices. And then elected offices, just they need to be held accountable. So if you make promises that people voted on, if you get to the end of your term and those promises were not met, you do need to face a consequence of jail time, of a fine, of community service would be the greater probably field of justice there. Depending on what you promised and then what you defaulted on. So that needs to happen. Another needed direction for the citizenry, and I did a homework assignment on this summer. Would really be curious to know your opinion. So making the vote itself a currency. And the way I was thinking of doing that right now is for the local election to have a state-backed or federally backed or both like promise so that everybody's vote was worth an actual dollar. Sorry, I don't really know how like money works. That's why I'm talking about it. And I don't get how we just print money and then okay. And then we make stuff and it's all this one big Okay. Anyway, though, so making the vote a currency, really excited about this idea. So starting on a local level for local elections, and then it could grow, but you should definitely start it locally. And then people just need to give a shit and know how much their local vote matters and what's going on in their town, especially for port towns like Duluth, Minnesota, World War II production town, for like major cities especially need to give a shit about their local government. So each citizen's vote would be $1. And then that citizen, after they finance their vote, after the citizens finance their vote, then they could track that dollar through the entire life of whoever it was elected. And maybe it'd be good to separate, well, you only get that dollar of opinion if your person's elected, or if your person didn't get elected, that dollar of opinion would just wait in like a bank or a reserve that would be local, like a local reserve, city reserve. And I think that would be great. And then the citizens could, for the person they did elect through, who said, oh, I elected this person to do this thing that's an issue that we need fixing, well, then they could log in at any time to track their dollar, along with everybody else's, to see, well, where is this candidate actually putting money? Where are they building? What are they doing? So they can literally scrutinize the entire candidacy of that elector. And then so those electors actually have to live up to that dollar that they were voted in on. And that would be really good for weighing like prosecution too. So if something happened, a bunch of the votes, a bunch of the dollars disappeared. Well, now you have a monetary reason to go to court that can be tracked and argued. And moving on. That idea, though, I'm super jazzed about, and I want to see the vote become become a currency. Because in a way, it already is, only it's more foreign interests are controlling that currency than domestic, independent, individual citizens. Is cumbias yerba mate? I love cumbias or some music. Sorry, I'll Google it. Sorry. Don't tell me. Cumbias. Music genre. I wish we would have more clubs that were like super Mexican American themed. That would be so cool. Actually have, and I bet you there are some down south that I just don't know of that actually have like snake venom shots, and I don't know. That would do really well. Yeah, just like super cowboy Mexican American. That'd be a cool league of bars. Okay. And then another thing with the citizenry, and this is a lesson from Obama, is that like the people are so beaten down generationally. They don't feel that declarative independence. They don't feel that they're born with rights that they can argue and levy against any tyrant. So I think for the citizenry too, they have to be reminded, like, no, more than any royalty in European, African, Chinese history, Indian, Aztec, etc., more than any royalty in any of these great empires through the thousands of years of building of empires, never has a population been more powerful than each and every single one of you as soon as you're born on this soil. And I want people to know that more. Like my aunt would, part of their like just their like the simple abuse would be like, "You're so entitled. You're so entitled." Yeah, I'm entitled to my rights. You're correct. I don't owe anybody. Nobody, well, people do owe me, but I don't owe anybody shit. Most people don't owe anyone shit. I don't know who's $23 trillion in debt, but I'm not. My children aren't. And any independent citizen I would defend has zero debt as far as the federal government as of 2:45 p.m. May 9th, 2023. My independent citizens are not at all in any debt except for their personal debts. So I want to see that in people again. And I'm always grateful when I do. But I want to see more of that. Like, no, you're born entitled. You are born more royal, more kingly, more aristocratic than anybody in Europe these past 200 years or just from any other empire ever, including today. So I know Obama, I haven't gotten too much into him, but that was something why people loved him, is because the way he would make people feel from the speeches somebody else wrote for him that he approved of. The way he made people feel is why so many people loved him, and then why so many people had mental fucking breakdowns when he wasn't president anymore. And then they weren't being told good things about themselves from millionaires on the news. But it is important because it did have a real effect. And so I want to be a better speaker myself in that way, especially when I'm speaking to citizens who feel like powerless or like the Declaration of Independence is something that they'll never know, and that like all is lost. So if everybody would raise your children in that way, well, you could at least do that. And so teaching them the founding documents and their rights as they stand, not your opinions of those rights. You leave opinions to the independent person translating the document. Last thing, and thank you for being here with me, audience, through this lengthy State of the Republic, needed lengthy State of the Republic. Predicted outcomes and consequences. And we'll just go through real quick. If people do not see how important it is to stay together for self-determination and the ability to be independent and to own your liberties, if that tide cannot turn back by the domestic populace, there will be the consequence of China and Russia will offer something that's not propaganda, and that's all they'll have to do. That's already happening, where people are like, well, Putin doesn't lie, and the East and West Coast have ripped off, fucked off, and the Midwest is guilty too. I'm just saying, like, as far as gravity. Just kidding, the West Coast is perfect. Don't change a thing. No, but they have ripped off and totally trespassed on Middle America, and just like anybody trying to be independent and stick to that to that realm of not trespassing on others' rights and doing just crazy shit with your freedom, like so many have. So it doesn't take a lot, and it is true. There's a lot of people who are like, oh, like, well, who gives a fuck? Like, if Putin invades or if China invades, because at least they're not lying to me. Because the whole thing right now is it's just left and right. It's just absolute propaganda for tyrannical purposes. So that's already happening, and it could get worse because now Russia's building wealth with Africa. They made such amazing partners this year with India, Africa, China, old Balkans friends. That's really stirred up a lot of healing and common cause in who's fucked them over, and so that's a predicted outcome if we cannot turn back to liberties, and if both political parties at large, which are just tyrannical right now, carry on their charade. It's stop it. So just be American. It's like a super easy piece of paper. Everybody just has to follow like the first 2 paragraphs. And then like the outline for the Constitution kind of helps explain further. And that's about it. So, yeah. Predicted outcomes for the psychology, that will fix itself. It's just how long and then who's gonna do it. But that's something like, if you're not getting better. And then as more people, I've met so many people going into psychology, doing my education. And for those people, a lot of them have like personal reasons. Like my mother was a drug addict. I myself am bipolar. And so because it's people healing themselves, then wanting to heal others or having that personal relationship, I think that'll be a much different class of psychologists than I'm enjoying having power over your mind. And I just do this because I'm a secularist sort of psychologist. Or, yeah. So I think that'll correct itself. Large food production, I think that will fix itself once people can start realizing that so much of their disease comes from bad food, especially with children. I don't know if you were in earlier 3-3 Vato, but talking about when I worked in public schools, twice a week, they would serve small children cinnamon rolls for breakfast. So no nutrition. And then in the after school program, it would be gummies and then cookies. And it would be like, like the Keebler mineral infused graham cracker cookies, but like no fiber. Like the kids were, so many of the behaviors, I was just like, no, these kids are hungry. They need like a proper meal. Yeah. So like the corporation that is in charge of feeding kids shit food in public schools has to go. And I hope that they do that, because it absolutely matters what you eat, especially if you're a malnourished child trying to learn. So I think that'll correct too. Again, once more people like say like, oh, this is completely in my power to go legislate or to go accuse somebody of doing something tyrannical, like that's in my power. So I think once more people feel that, and a lot of people at least know it in some way, that will correct. The pharmacy. Yeah. So what are they? They're legalizing MDMA and mushrooms, and I'm sure there's like some small practices doing really good work there. The cannabis is almost everywhere now. So a lot of people are doing self-pharmacy, and I think they really have been anyway. As far as like the populations that don't do that, they're just going to keep taking their worser drugs that numb them and whatever, do work that some of them have to do. Bye. Oh no. Thank you for joining me. Hope your coworker isn't too harmed by the electricity. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate you popping in. And okay, so predicted outcomes and consequences for the educations. You're just gonna keep tormenting kids, and then the kids are gonna not learn, and then things that one will self-correct too, and that's the way a lot of kids can regain their power, is being like, no, this is what happened, and you can't keep me from having my opinion. It's been really cool seeing people active in school boards. So I think that'll self-correct. The socialists will not. So the genocidal socialist group, same group that murdered my great-grandmother's family in Yucatan and that exist in common culture in America today, same ones who were involved in World War I and World War II, the Nazi socialists. They will not stop unless they are stopped. It's a huge mechanism of people, ideas, habits, and some productions. And so that won't stop unless it's stopped. And the consequences could be absolutely catastrophic. But at least we live in a place where that unfolds in such a way that it can't exactly ever grow how it wants to, because people aren't buying it at the rate that they want to sell it. So, all right. And that is my State of the Republic. Thank you for joining me. Thank you, my viewers and fellow Americans. And please comment below just anything you think in response to what I have to say. Excuse me, I'm going to go on a walk, probably overthink about anything I missed, and try to relax. And I wanted to say one last thing. Andy Stumpf, I'm sorry that we had so much miscommunication while I was being tortured by your former colleagues, other Navy SEALs in your age group, and political agendas. Exposures, as far as the American sex trafficking and child sex trafficking goes. I'm talking about Veterans for Child Rescue. And I thank you a lot for just providing so much truth from a person with authority who had Deliver Fund on and other relevant authorities with information on it because I was only able to free myself. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm only able to free myself from what I can plan on. And thank you. And so thank you for doing that, because you told me exactly what I needed to know that any other person who I'd been reporting to could have told me since I first started. Well, I technically reported when I was 21, because that's why I was put in a shelter, because my dad was trying to kill me. I think they finally were like, I don't think we're going to make any money off of this one. So technically I reported since 2011, excuse me. But since 2016, and doing it from like a healthy place and a safe place. Anybody could have told me like any of the super simple realities that you exposed on your your news channel, Cleared Hot Podcast, your news and gossip channel. Yeah, I'm just super grateful for that, because if I didn't get into it, and then if I didn't try to get an answer from you, I would just still be trying to work with the socialists that were trying to kill me where I was living and going to school at UWS, Duluth, Minnesota. And then I would wouldn't be, because my goal is, like I told you in the email, to take my family to court. And so I was thinking, because my brother had small children, well, it's better if I'm around. So if something happens, I can lose my shit, so that somebody if my dad had molested my niece, then I could actually this time, because I wouldn't act in defense of myself, just because that was tortured out of me. I get just immediately get tired when I think of if my dad came to attack me. I just get tired and irritated. But if I had a knife, if I had a gun, I would physically, because I had been tortured, wouldn't be able to prevent that onslaught. Also, his grip strength is way stronger than mine. I talked about the lack of a woman's Second Amendment. And so I was going to just stay because I'm just trying to rebuild, and I should have been supported in that. Duluth Police Department, county, social services, everybody who knew me, the mayor, etc., should have been supported in that. And then I wanted to have the strength to be able to do it, but I did not know how many people were a part of that socialist gang in Duluth, Minnesota, throughout Minnesota, and the trafficking gangs in general. I had no idea. And then you told me what nobody else was telling me, and so you helped me get to more freedom and safety. So thank you, because I told you in many emails, in one of them that I sent you, that I was just gonna live the lie I had to, and then still try to develop something really great to be levied both against the domestic socialists and then Russia and China, which I knew were coming. It's never been a better opportunity to actually invade America. And then also the socialists domestically have genocidal plans. And so I was like, well, I'll just live this lie, as far as not being a normal person, American woman entitled to rights. So I'll live this lie, because I got the hint after being slowly putting it all together and working through the pharmacy I was put on again, and then the psychologists that were like, no, forgive your family, grow with your mother, peace to the world. Yeah, so thank you for doing that and having information from people with authority. God, because I don't know if I'd be alive. It would definitely be, no, because I was just not going to live a lie anymore. And then just to actually having been planning a family with your former colleague, Stephen Kinsell, to having actually planning that life and thinking of my kids in a real way, because I wasn't going to really do that. I was just going to, I didn't see it as a reality. And then how would I ever explain to somebody? And then I'm not going to defraud somebody in a relationship with me with a child that's also theirs. I wouldn't. And then I would just know that, like how would I keep this gang from harming my child? And so it's like, what kind of man would be able to do that? And so dating these veterans, your former colleague, and planning a family with him for the first time, I was like, oh, okay, well, no, and no, no, no. And I didn't know that there were like a lot of men like that, like your former colleague and then other former veterans who surrounded them, because I was still envisioning, like you had said in your podcast recently, like putting people on a pedestal that you admire. Like I was putting the American soldier veteran on a pedestal because it like helped me gain my independence, reading about how some of them, like GWAT veterans, just like the suffering and then having to adapt to real life and like all the suffering, just so many suffering stories. And then how they adapt out of it. And then that was like a psychology that was relevant to me because I had been tortured. And so, and dehumanized and after the fact. And so I was really feeling a kindred spirit with you and the other GWAT veterans. Still do. Very kindred we are. And so, but I was wrong. And like, I didn't know how nasty a lot of them got. And like you said, Andy Stumpf, you said that you've met the best people and the absolute worst human beings. And I heeded that warning later because I didn't really take you seriously before. Well, I didn't know because I didn't like, you're given the greatest gift. You're born so free and you're given this huge gift, and then your friends die for that. And then the fact that some of you turn into like absolute fucking gutter trash, just like the biggest tyrant wearing a flag that you could ever imagine. I didn't know that so many got that way, and whether it's from a million different things or their own accord, I am grateful for that warning, and that also helped clarify a lot for me, and it helps me be like, oh no, my boundaries need to be as gnarly and as painful as the isolation I was imagining for myself. And then I need to, as if I'm giving advice to a daughter, to myself as a teenager, as if I'm giving her advice, I'd say, is how I should actually make decisions for myself. Because my reaction, I react so much to the torture that I lived through, adapting in the best way I could. I'm still adapting out of it. It's going much better because I can't do anything off of lies. Otherwise, I have to figure it all out for myself. Like, oh, where can I go to be safe? What's like, I still want to work in defense of what happened to me, one offense of what happened to me, and other girls I knew growing up and cousins I had. So like, who's doing the work? And so, gosh, and yeah, thank you, Glenn Devitt, too, for being really honest in your Ironclad episode. Because then that led me to be like, okay, great. It's like straight legislation now is actually where I can go. Oh, you didn't leave me 3-3 Vato. Yeah, so I think though, so PTSD and toxic leadership, that's where it is, because I observed a little bit, especially dating like one of these guys who had been in like such a close-knit group throughout so many years of his young adult life fighting in war, is the groupthink thing. And then how, because you're working with a group to survive a life or death scenario, and you have to work together, and you have to listen to shitty people because you're going to do a job in a life or death scenario and that toxic leadership, when you get out to the real world and into normal society, you have to forget any leadership that you had in a life or death scenario. So you kind of have to come home and raise yourself as if you were a toddler, because you're reactive. And then this guy had a granddad in the IRA, 3-3 Vato. So he had some plans in his mind when he was in Afghanistan. And that's just a little Irish American history that also needs to be talked about, for better or for worse. But yeah, so thank you for doing that, Andy Stumpf and Glenn Devitt, in your Ironclad episode. Because, yeah, just then no one's coming to rescue you, and we're not going to rescue our way out of it. Just the honesty. Because now then I know, as a survivor, I'm like, okay, I need to be able to save up, buy a house, be secure. Then I can go back and bring my family to court. Nobody is interested in helping me with that right now. But then on the other part, like, because I'll be in South Dakota. And so Noam is an awesome governor. And then I looked up like the legislators for that, because of finally getting like some goddamn direction and truth from Cleared Hot Podcast, Andy Stumpf and Glenn Devitt and Nick McKinley from Deliver Fund. Because now I'm like, okay, from what you guys have all given me on the topic I lived through and was tortured by, still have no help from, now I know, we need to legislate so any child sex crime, actually that should all be torture. And like precedent needs to be set. That hasn't happened. So that's where we are. Because like Nick McKinley will talk about the CEO of Deliver Fund, also a veteran from GWAT. I'm just going to talk about the GWAT era. I know not everybody, I know we have people all over, but I love saying GWAT, actually. I just heard the term from Andy's podcast, and it's my favorite term to say right now. So he was saying that their biggest struggle, so this is episode 265 of Cleared Hot Podcast, Mr. Bot. So if you're still with me, because they talk most upfront about the American child sex trafficking and sex trafficking in general, and like what they're doing about it. And so they were like, okay, so we are collecting data, and then we're trying to get these packets so that the victim doesn't have to be re-victimized in court. A lot of people get off of knowing that the person they sexually traumatized can't do anything in court. So a lot of them actually hope they do go to court to watch them squirm and then forever masturbate to having power over this person. So Nick McKinley knows that and recognizes that. And so they're trying to get it so the victim doesn't have to testify in court, because there's so much evidence that they're providing from the surveillance they're doing and the data they're collecting. And then Andy had asked about sentencing in that episode. And he was like, yeah, no, sentencing sucks a lot, which is why we're trying to get better with our data so that we can get it. But that's something I can do as a survivor and as an independent citizen, is I can legislate for harder, appropriate sentencing. Any child sex crime federally should be torture. And that's the standard that needs to be set. And that's how these people need to be charged, is if you do a child sex crime, whatever sex crime on the book, great, but torture just needs to be added. And so I'm happy that it went that way. And like, thank you for mostly treating me like a human, Andy Stumpf. I don't know what kind of relationship you actually have with Stephen Kinsella. He talked about you all the time, often. So I assume, just because I would really watch your conversations intently because it's super interesting, and I was like, this is speaking my language, and I like it. Also, I'm like learning from it because I don't always know what you guys mean when you're talking to each other or when you're saying anything. So I don't think you meant to dehumanize me. I think you just have like a chucklehead reaction when I first came to you in a serious way because you had your Patreon. And I was going to just say, like, hey, what advice would you give me? I reported to Veterans for Child Rescue, and now they're refusing to get back to me, even though they took my case and gave it to the FBI and said that they were helping me. And then the people who are still threatening me, it's this gang. What should I do? But they're everywhere. So, like, is it better a gang or moving to a new region where you're like, who can I trust? And so, wanting to have had asked you that, I'll just remind you what I logged on for. And then I don't think you were ever intending to be dehumanizing to me, except when Stephen made it seem like I was stalking you from watching your podcast in my apartment. Whatever, Stephen was manipulative as fuck, so that's how I'm going to imagine that happened. And he did assault me twice. And then I kicked him out for watching it. So I'm going to assume, and I don't understand like nonsense ill will. So I don't understand that sort of things. I think about serious threats, and so I imagine that they just got in your head about that. And then when I actually came to Kalispell to be like, oh, well, is Deliver Fund here? Do they have an office? Where do I do my intake or share my story? Also, like, if you're messing with me on purpose, I'm trying to do something for America, and it seems like you're tyrannically getting in the way of that. That was my attitude coming out to Kalispell, because I couldn't tell, and then things got so confusing, and then I was re-trafficked. So that was like my intention the whole time. So, and then you kept like reporting like truth on the matter that was affecting me, and so thank you, and thank you for replying to my emails, Andy Stumpf. I even though you told me I had mental problems, I was like, you know that I came to you as a sex trafficking victim. What are you talking about? And yeah, and I'm sorry for the mean things I said in that email, and I know I already apologized, but I am, because it's just like, fucking Christ, like, nobody wants to help the most vulnerable, and they're all trying to cover and think that life is just going to be normal going on, but no, it's all domestic from here, babes, and everything's going to be felt everywhere. There's no one's just retiring in peace. It's going to be quite a time these next 100 years. And so the people who are actually anti-child rape trafficking, who think the people who, for religious or because they think it's a duty of freedom, can molest their kids or rape them or torture them for any reason, need to be put to death or penalized and ousted. And it's millions of Americans generationally. So all of us who are on the side of, yeah, all the pedophiles can eat the dirt, actually. And for the people who think it's a part of faith that are currently doctors, psychologists, lawyers, police officers, politicians, they need to be met with the other side. And that's why I got so angry too, because it was like, oh my God, you're all I have. We got Deliver Fund, Andy Stumpf, Glenn Devitt. I'm sure Evan Hafer also thinks pedophiles can just eat dirt. He seems like that kind of man. Mr. Logan Stark, he also seems like that kind of man. And it's the greatest tyranny right now is that enslavement children are going through sexually, and they have been for a few decades. So for you guys to not be that same, like that 9/11, like I'm defending my country for the children who are being harmed. That made me really angry because that's a bit of stolen valor, to have an attitude that's claiming American, and that's creating news and products and podcasts off the things claiming American, but acting communally. So that was just another reason I got real angry at you guys. Yeah, because Andy, you said in the email, you were like, and you wonder why none of these organizations want to work with you. I was like, oh, no, I do, and I find the answer. So, yeah. All right, that's my State of the Republic, and then, yeah, Cleared Hot Podcast, good. Andy's just a normal man. I'm not gonna. I don't actually know any. Sorry, no. You're an innocent, normal man surrounded by your communal survival network is what I'll call it. Domestic GWAT's communal survival network. No, just I'm talking to my audience now. Yeah, so it's a great podcast. Literally the best Cleared Hot podcast. Literally the best insights into so much. He has like an officer from like the Santa Cruz Police Department on. He has a CIA agent who quit in 2001 on, Lauren Moren. She also works for Deliver Fund. He has like the most diverse topics from a place of authority. So it's actually like, and this is why I get excited. And I'm sorry, Leah, your wife, if it's still coming off inappropriate. I don't mean it to be, but it is like the most. And you're super awesome lady, who I also don't know, and I never intended harm against, except when I thought you guys were together, like getting off on wanting to harm me. That's what was happening at the time, and then you were like mimicking like those kind of epithets, and so, but I don't think you were. I think you were observing, and then yeah, you guys are surrounded by terrible people. Leah talked about it in her Chewbacca podcast about like, you guys talked about like behaviors on the mat, like people getting aroused and wanting to play with sex abuse while they're doing jiu-jitsu. You talked about that a little bit in the community you live in Montana, and yeah, it's a lot of sexists in Montana, and just like a lot of cucks in jiu-jitsu, which is such a good thing. You and Andy are this jiu-jitsu power couple, because I think it does make a difference, because you guys are really good at boundaries, and that's what we're looking for here at the Independent Party. Yeah, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. I didn't have any cannabis today. I'm going to go do that in a little bit, and try to relax. I want to get better at communicating. I don't want what happened these past few years with all of you. Deliver Fund, Andy, Steven, and fucking the people who are more guilty, Veterans for Child Rescue. Well, actually, Steven and Veterans for Child Rescue are probably similarly guilty. But I don't want it to affect things going forward, because I mean really well. And I've been trying to like be a part of our country and free and safe for so long. And I just always come back to thinking optimistic, and I never shy away from, well, I used to, but I never shy away from these evils and these things that are threatening us. And I don't want to have it be an issue, because naturally people fighting against the child rape trafficking, we're going to come together. It's not a lot of people who can handle that reality, and then who have like the spirit to fight against it, or you just haven't found it yet. And so I'm gonna talk about things that happened as they did, because that was really dangerous what Tony Feaster at Veterans for Child Rescue did, former Navy SEAL. And I do fear what people in your own community will do these next few decades. And I fear what you would do to each other, because to see the way Steven acted, and just like he enjoyed, I think, watching both of us lose it because he couldn't get his way or to be affected by him in any way. And I imagine that there's a lot of guys within that community who, like you said, you've seen the greatest men and the worst men. And yeah, the worst ones are some goddamn fucking Nazis. And so they do need to be shown the exit sign. Not shown the exit sign. They do need to be pushed out the exit. Is it the blue? No, is it the red, the green, or the arrow? Sorry. Because again, the worst of them are like genocidal, socialist Nazis. And I think that what they'll try to do is just like demolish like goodwill, which I have. Clear Hot podcast host Andy Stumpf, you think you have that. Evan Hafer and your company, you have that goodwill, protection of the people, wanting to preserve their rights and their independence against tyrannical threats. Logan Stark, Glenn Devitt, Deliver Fund, and Nick McKinley. Kara Smith, I think you're kind of a little bitch, but I think you do too. Because I believe you, and I like when I don't get where a woman's coming from, and then it's a journey to figure it out. So I don't want there to be miscommunication, and I do plan to push for that legislation for torture, any child sex crimes, torture, and then I do still plan to sue my family and do that. I would love help to do that because they're attached to a domestic terrorist gang, and then on my dad's side, and then on my mother's side, a socialist, generational, foreignly influenced gang. And so there's no way that me as a single person, if I have my own house, do what I need to just work and finish school and make that money to purchase, there's no way I'll be able to provide my own safety while going after them, because I'm also going to be able to name names and notice things happening in a geopolitical sphere, because that's what I do for enjoyment. And so I would rather not be assassinated. I want to have a family in my own life and be able to live and still get justice against these people and be preventative and help in a real way fix some issues as we're in my state of the republic. And so yeah, I'm not sorry for my behavior. Andy Stumpf, Leah Stumpf, Evan Hafer, Nick McKinley. Really, Andy was the one criticizing my behavior. Fucking cunt. But I am glad because I got the answers I was looking for. And for my viewers, like, seriously, Cleared Hot Podcast, he does a 9/11 expose. Where were you on 9/11? That just provide me so much insight. And then I was like, where was I? Oh, what a charade. And what a good fourth grade memory to be relevant today. So he does that, and then just has so many people on from so many different fields. So check it out. Then you'll know why I'm obsessed with it. Because it's just like, oh, information. Oh, give me that information. And I will check out 3-3 Vato. You said Sean Ryan. I'll check it out. It's just you're competing with Clear Top Podcast and Andy Stumpf. So, but no, I know it'll be good because I want to hear. You all have like a different language you speak, and so that'll be nice to broaden my podcast, veteran horizons. And I am sorry for kind of being obsessed with your husband, Leah. I'm so sorry. I mean it for learning. All right. That was all. No, I also think he's attractive. I can't lie. My face. This is why things have been so hard for me. I'm like, I just can't lie. I am a bloodhound. I am a metal detector. So I have to eat food because I know I'm rambling because I'm hungry. So thank you all. Glad to talk with you, 3-3 Vato, other viewers, and other people who will see this podcast. I'm going to send it to Deliver Fund just because I do want you guys to get back to me. And I know you're collecting data. So if anything, I bet it's just interesting when I send you shit. All right. Oh, so much love and freedom.